Good morning/afternoon, everyone. I want to talk to you today about something so simple yet so powerful that can change the course of your life. We often think that change requires huge, overwhelming steps, grand gestures, major sacrifices, and months of effort. But I want to challenge that belief and ask you to consider, what if all it takes is 14 minutes? Vulnerability often carries a stigma in our culture. We're taught to hide our weaknesses, to shield ourselves from the possibility of hurt, and to present a version of ourselves that is strong, polished, and unshakable. We wear our armor, afraid that if we let our guard down, we will be seen as fragile or inadequate. But the truth is, this very armor is what keeps us from connecting with others, from truly understanding ourselves, and from accessing our own growth potential. Vulnerability is not weakness. In fact, it's the ultimate form of courage. When we choose to embrace vulnerability, we choose to show up in the world as we are, messy, imperfect, and human. And in doing so, we allow ourselves to experience the full spectrum of life with all its highs and lows, triumphs and struggles. Vulnerability gives us permission to be authentic, to say, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. When we open ourselves up to vulnerability, we also open ourselves up to the possibility of deeper connection. The connections that matter most in life aren't made through perfection or pretense. They're made through shared experience, empathy, and understanding. When we are vulnerable with others, we give them the space to be vulnerable as well. And that creates a bond that is far more meaningful and lasting than any superficial interaction could ever be. For example, think about a time when you've been in a conversation with someone who shared something deeply personal, something raw. In that moment, you likely felt an immediate sense of trust and respect. The barrier between you and that person melted away because you were no longer dealing with an image or a facade, but with the real, authentic person in front of you. That is the power of vulnerability. But it's not just about how vulnerability impacts our relationships with others, it's about how it transforms us on a personal level. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we also create space for growth. Growth doesn't come from staying in our comfort zones or avoiding difficult emotions. It comes from leaning into discomfort and being open to what's unfamiliar. It's through vulnerability that we learn our own limits, our strengths, and our resilience. Take a moment and think about the times when you've been most proud of yourself. I would wager that those moments were not when everything was smooth sailing, but when you pushed yourself past your fears, when you let yourself be seen, when you took a risk. Whether it was expressing your true feelings, asking for help when you needed it, or stepping into a new role, it was your vulnerability that allowed you to show up fully and embrace your potential. In the context of transformation, embracing vulnerability means choosing to let go of the idea that we have to be perfect or in control at all times. It's a shift from trying to protect ourselves from hurt to recognizing that the very act of opening ourselves to pain and discomfort can lead to greater strength, wisdom, and growth. In those 14 minutes I spoke about earlier, take the time to reflect on what it is you're hiding from, what parts of yourself you've been too afraid to show. It might be a fear of failure, a fear of rejection, or the fear of being misunderstood. But what if those things you fear the most are actually the key to your growth? What if the power you've been looking for is already within you, waiting for you to embrace it by stepping into vulnerability? The world needs more people who are willing to be real, to show up with honesty and authenticity, to embrace their imperfections, and to lead with their hearts open. In those 14 minutes, consider this. What would it look like for you to lean into your vulnerability with intention and curiosity instead of avoiding it with shame or fear? What could you discover about yourself in that space? Remember, vulnerability is not about weakness. It's about having the courage to be seen, to feel deeply, and to show up in the world as you truly are. And that, my friends, is where the true power lies. This expanded view of embracing vulnerability focuses on how it is both an internal and relational force that fuels connection, growth, and empowerment. It challenges the conventional view that vulnerability is something to hide and flips it to show how it can be a strength and a pathway to deeper fulfillment. Self-compassion is one of the most profound yet often overlooked practices we can engage in. In a world that glorifies productivity, success, and perfection, we've been taught to judge ourselves harshly when we fall short, to push ourselves past our limits, and to constantly strive for something more. The result? We end up disconnected from ourselves, trapped in cycles of self-criticism and burnout, unable to experience the love and kindness we so willingly give to others. But self-compassion is the antidote to this struggle. It's the practice of treating ourselves with the same kindness, care, and understanding that we would offer a loved one in their moment of need. Instead of berating ourselves for our mistakes or perceived shortcomings, we acknowledge our suffering and respond with gentleness, offering ourselves comfort and reassurance in our moments of struggle. Imagine for a moment that you are a dear friend, someone who means the world to you. If they were going through a tough time, whether they were feeling down, anxious, or overwhelmed, what would you say to them? You would offer encouragement, empathy, and support. You would listen without judgment, recognizing their humanity. You wouldn't criticize them for feeling vulnerable or imperfect. You would simply be there, offering your compassion. So why do we withhold that same kindness from ourselves? In fact, when we practice self-compassion, we begin to build a more nurturing relationship with ourselves, one that allows us to thrive even in the face of difficulty. The key to self-compassion is recognizing that we are not alone in our struggles. We are part of the shared human experience. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone faces challenges. We all have moments of vulnerability. When we extend compassion to ourselves, we remind ourselves that we are worthy of love and care, even in our most imperfect moments. The beauty of self-compassion is that it helps us break the cycle of self-criticism and negativity that often holds us back from growth. When we make a mistake or experience failure, our natural response is often to judge ourselves harshly, to ruminate on what went wrong, and to think that we are somehow flawed. But self-compassion invites us to step away from that cycle. It encourages us to view our imperfections with understanding instead of disdain, to offer ourselves comfort instead of self-judgment. In practice, self-compassion starts with awareness. It begins by noticing when you're being hard on yourself. The next time you catch yourself criticizing or blaming yourself, pause and take a deep breath. Instead of falling into the familiar pattern of judgment, try asking yourself, what would it look like if I treated myself with kindness right now? In that moment, you might choose to say something gentle to yourself. It's okay to be imperfect. I'm doing my best, and that's enough. Or you might choose to practice mindfulness, allowing the emotions to surface without adding layers of judgment or shame. Self-compassion also involves forgiving ourselves. It's important to remember that making mistakes is a natural part of being human. When we make errors or experience setbacks, it's easy to fall into the trap of self-blame. But forgiving ourselves means accepting that we are not defined by our mistakes. We are allowed to learn, to grow, and to try again. Offering ourselves forgiveness creates a sense of freedom, allowing us to move forward with grace rather than being stuck in the past. Another critical aspect of self-compassion is acknowledging that we are deserving of care, not just in times of struggle, but at all times. We often reserve self-compassion for when we're going through something difficult, but the truth is we deserve to be kind to ourselves every day. Make time for moments of rest, joy, and relaxation without guilt or the need to earn it. You are worthy of peace and happiness simply because you exist. In those 14 minutes I spoke about earlier, I encourage you to reflect on how you treat yourself on a daily basis. Do you tend to be your own worst critic? Do you withhold love and acceptance when you make a mistake? If so, I invite you to change the narrative. In those 14 minutes, ask yourself, what if I started to speak to myself with kindness and encouragement? What if I allowed myself the grace to be human? The power of self-compassion lies in its ability to heal us from within. It softens the edges of our self-criticism, allowing us to approach life with greater peace, confidence, and resilience. When we practice self-compassion, we stop waiting for external validation or approval because we have already given ourselves permission to be imperfect, to be enough, and to be loved. So remember, self-compassion is not self-indulgence. It's not about excusing behavior or avoiding responsibility. It's about showing up for ourselves with the same tenderness, care, and acceptance that we would offer someone we love. It's about cultivating a healthy, loving relationship with ourselves so that we can thrive in every area of life without the need for constant self-criticism or fear of failure. You are worthy of the same compassion you so generously give to others. In those 14 minutes, begin the practice of self-compassion and watch how it transforms not just your relationship with yourself, but with the world around you. This expanded view highlights the importance of self-compassion as a tool for healing, growth, and resilience. It encourages individuals to embrace imperfection, treat themselves with kindness, and ultimately create a nurturing internal dialogue that allows them to thrive. Certainly. Let's dive deeper into the concept of set boundaries to protect your peace and explore how this practice is essential for maintaining emotional well-being and personal growth. Set boundaries to protect your peace. Boundaries are often misunderstood. We tend to think of them as walls that create distance, as though setting boundaries makes us cold, distant, or unapproachable. But in reality, boundaries are not about isolating ourselves or pushing people away. Boundaries are a form of self-respect, a practice of honoring our needs, values, and limits. They protect our emotional, mental, and physical well-being, allowing us to show up in the world as our best selves, without compromising our peace. Setting boundaries is an essential act of self-care. In a world where demands on our time, energy, and attention are constantly increasing, it's easy to get caught up in trying to please others, saying yes when we mean no, and stretching ourselves too thin in the name of responsibility or obligation. But what often happens in this cycle is that we lose sight of ourselves. We become drained, overwhelmed, and resentful. Our peace is disrupted, and we find ourselves stuck in a constant state of busyness, stress, and emotional depletion. And no wonder people often reach for medication when they need it. But here's the truth. We cannot give our best to others when we're depleted. We cannot show up as our full, authentic selves when we are overwhelmed by other people's demands or expectations. That's where boundaries come in. Boundaries are the healthy limits we set in our relationships, work, and life to ensure that we are honoring our own needs, preserving our peace, and protecting our emotional energy. In those 14 minutes I mentioned earlier, I want you to think about where you need to set boundaries in your life. Where are you giving away your energy? Where are you overcommitting? Or gratitude is often viewed as a practice of recognizing and appreciating the positive things in our lives, but it's more than just a momentary feeling of thankfulness. Gratitude is a mindset, a way of engaging with the world that shifts our focus from what's lacking or what we don't have to what we already have and what is already good. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, achieve more, and accumulate more, it's easy to forget the importance of simply being thankful for what we already have. The practice of gratitude isn't just about the big moments like landing a dream job or celebrating a special achievement. It's about recognizing the value in everyday moments, in the simple things that often go unnoticed. Gratitude for what is, in its most powerful form, invites us to stop chasing the next thing and instead to be present and appreciative of the blessings in our lives right now. When we cultivate gratitude for what is, we create a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. In a culture that often emphasizes what we're missing or what we need to improve upon, gratitude helps us shift our focus. Instead of constantly striving for more or feeling like we're falling short, we begin to see the richness in our current lives. We learn to celebrate the small victories, to find joy in the mundane, and to appreciate the beauty that surrounds us, even in the midst of challenges. For example, in your day-to-day life, there are likely moments that you take for granted, moments that seem small but are filled with opportunity for gratitude. Maybe it's the warmth of a cup of coffee in the morning, the feeling of sunlight on your face, or the comfort of a hug from a friend. These moments may not seem significant on their own, but when we start to recognize them, they accumulate and begin to change how we experience our lives. Gratitude also shifts our perspective on challenges. It's easy to focus on what's going wrong or what isn't working in our lives, especially when things are tough. But when we choose to look at our struggles through the lens of gratitude, we begin to see them as opportunities for growth, resilience, and learning. Difficult situations are often where we develop our greatest strength and wisdom. Gratitude allows us to honor these moments not for their difficulty, but for their capacity to shape us into stronger, more grounded individuals. In those 14 minutes, take time to reflect on what is present in your life right now. What can you be grateful for? It doesn't have to be monumental. Maybe it's the fact that you woke up today, the chance to learn something new, the people in your life who care for you, or even the small comforts that make your day easier. By practicing gratitude for what is, we train ourselves to find joy in the present moment instead of waiting for something outside of us to bring fulfillment. Gratitude also helps us combat negative thinking. When we're caught in a cycle of stress, frustration, or self-doubt, it's easy to fall into the trap of focusing only on the negative aspects of our lives. Gratitude offers a powerful counterbalance. It disrupts the negative thought patterns and invites us to focus on the positive. By regularly practicing gratitude, we begin to rewire our brains to automatically look for what is good, what is working, and what is worthy of appreciation, even on the tough days. One of the most profound aspects of cultivating gratitude is how it enhances our relationships. When we express gratitude toward others, we not only uplift them, but also strengthen our connection with them. When we take a moment to acknowledge and appreciate the people in our lives, whether it's a friend, a partner, a colleague, or even a stranger, we deepen our bonds and create a culture of positivity and support. Gratitude also fosters a sense of contentment and peace. We live in a world that often tells us that we need more, that we're not enough, or that we haven't achieved enough. Gratitude turns this narrative on its head. It reminds us that we are enough, that we have enough, and that we are worthy of joy just as we are. When we embrace gratitude for what is, we release the constant pressure to strive for more and instead find contentment in the present. In your 14 minutes, I encourage you to start a gratitude practice. This could be as simple as taking a few deep breaths and reflecting on 3 things you're grateful for today. You could write them down in a journal or share them with someone close to you. As you make this practice a daily habit, you'll begin to notice a shift in your mindset. The more you cultivate gratitude for what is, the more natural it will become to appreciate the small, everyday blessings that often go unnoticed. And here's the secret. When we practice gratitude for what is, we are more likely to attract even more of what we appreciate into our lives. Gratitude is magnetic. The more we focus on the good, the more good we begin to see. We shift our energy from lack to abundance, from scarcity to possibility. By acknowledging and celebrating what's already in front of us, we open ourselves to receiving even more. Gratitude is not just a feel-good practice. It's a transformative tool that shifts our perspective, changes our energy, and opens us up to the richness of life. In those 14 minutes, take a moment to acknowledge what is good and beautiful in your life right now. The act of gratitude will fill you with a sense of peace, purpose, and deep connection to the present moment. As we come to the end of these 14 minutes, I want you to remember this. Change doesn't have to be a monumental event. It doesn't require years of effort or drastic transformations. Sometimes all it takes is a shift in how we show up for ourselves and the world around us. By embracing vulnerability as power, practicing self-compassion, setting boundaries to protect our peace, and cultivating gratitude for what is, we begin to create the space for real change in our lives. These are not just actions, they are ways of being. They are the foundation of a life that is authentic, grounded, and filled with purpose. In the next 14 minutes of your day, I encourage you to put these practices into action. Reflect on what's already in front of you, what you can be grateful for, where you can be kinder to yourself, and what boundaries you need to set to honor your peace. Remember, you don't need to change everything overnight. Start small. Every step you take toward nurturing these practices is a step toward transforming your life. When you do that, you will feel more peace, and it'll be easier to stand up for yourself. Your life is already full of potential. The changes you seek are already within you. You have the power to create a life that feels right for you, one that honors who you are, where you've been, and where you're going. And it all begins with the choice to show up, to be vulnerable, to practice kindness toward yourself, and to live with gratitude for all that is. So in these next 14 minutes, choose you, choose peace, choose growth, and choose gratitude. The life you want is already here, waiting for you to embrace it. Thank you.